Bruin Bible, what is up? We have a very, very special edition today. We are doing a crossover episode with our friends, the people at What's Bruin. We got regular guest of the show, Mike Regalado. He's been on here so many different times. Iron Mike. How are you doing today, brother?
Good. Thank you for having me back on again.
Dude, we're stoked to have you. We got a brand new guest on, his co-host from the What's Bruin show. I met him at Pac-12 Media Day. Great dude, big Strokes fan, so he got a lot of points in my book. Mr. Jake Merrifield, how you doing today, brother?
I'm good, man. I'm very happy to be on the show. Thank you for inviting me on.
Dude, we are stoked to have you guys. And as much as I am stoked to have you guys, we do have to recap this heartbreaking loss that UCLA was dealt at the Rose Bowl this past Saturday, a 48-45 shootout. We're talking about close to 1,200 yards of total offense from both sides. Not a lot of defense being played on both sides. I want to just kind of start with you, Mike. Where did you watch the game? Were you at the game, or who did you watch it with? What was kind of the game day experience for you going into a UCLA USC Classic, if you will?
I was up at the up in the press box, and got there a little early. There were some friends that were there. I actually got friends some tickets. People are like, "Oh, I want to go," and it was last minute, so I'm like, "Okay, I might know some people here and there." Go meet up. It was a great atmosphere beforehand. The most people I've seen at the Rose Bowl tailgating all season long, and obviously it was sold out. Even though it had the banners up there.
It's the best crowd in years.
Harps, yeah. But yeah, best atmosphere. And, just aside from the result of, for us that covers UCLA, just a great game. I mean, it didn't hit me in the moment, but a lot of people were talking about it afterwards, that this is probably one of the best UCLA USC games, ever in the series. It's just unfortunate that, it comes down to, UCLA finally gets a stop, about 1 minute and 12 seconds left. It's possible that DTR can take him down. They were doing it and then let down. So aside from that, just a great atmosphere. It was a really good game.
Bummer.
Crowd looked electric, to say the least. I was actually tailgating parking lot pregame. We did a live show, and then I watched at a bar and just, sunkenly just drove home, after that, and just was very, very depressed about the loss. Jake, how was your game day experience? Were you at the game yourself? Were you tailgating like LAFB was there?
Yeah, I was at the game. I didn't come in until, probably about an hour before kickoff. Normally, I get there minutes before kickoff and just like cruise right into the game. But obviously for this, it was going to be crowded. So I got there a little bit earlier. And yeah, just like Mike said, it was a great atmosphere. It's the most crowded that place has been in years, since before COVID, really. And it's an SC UCLA game. So if you've ever been to any of those, you know that you're going to get your share of obnoxious fans on both sides. And where we were sitting, we had plenty of obnoxious SC fans. Although one thing I'll say, I was very happy that it was a mostly Bruin crowd. Like, there was a lot more Bruins there than Trojans. There wasn't the half red and half blue that we've seen in years past sometimes. But there were plenty of obnoxious Trojan fans just, anyway. And then there were a few Bruins that had a little bit too much to drink, maybe at your tailgate. I don't know, Will. But they came strolling in, and they were probably in no shape to watch a game, but they were in plenty good shape to start yelling at people. But it was fun, though. I mean, that's a kind of a unique thing about the Crosstown Showdown. So that part of it was a check. Great atmosphere. And then the game, played out how it played out. The Bruins had a prime position in the game. They were playing so well, and then they kind of let it slip away in the middle part of the game there, and then tried to get, and they had a chance to get it back at the end, and it just, they came up short. But it was obviously a horrible game for all of us Bruin fans because they lost. But if you were, if you weren't partial to the other team in this game, it was a fantastic game.
Fantastic game indeed, and it was such a gut punch. But if we can kind of remove ourselves from the situation a little bit in our Bruin ties, I'm really proud of what we put out there on the football field and the chance we had at the end to, kind of make a run. And, that starts with the guy who played his final game at the Rose Bowl, and Dorian Thompson Robinson, a game of really high highs, some really low lows, 390 yards of total offense, 6 touchdowns, matched his total from last year's USC game. I'll go right back to you, Jake. I just want your assessment of DTR's performance. Grade from A to F. What would you give him on this game, and just your thoughts of DTR's kind of career as a UCLA Bruin?
Well, I think just because of the turnovers, you have to you have to lower his overall grade, right? So I would say something like a B- or something, just because you can't have 4 turnovers in a game and not, have a great negative impact on the game. But with that being said, I said this on my show, and it was that you could, if you wanted to view this with the most negative lens, you could say, oh, DTR melted down again. The old DTR, the DTR that we first saw in his first couple of years, where it was like he was just a turnover machine and making negative plays at the wrong times. But you can't characterize. I don't think you can characterize him in this game like that. He was heroic. He was a warrior. He had a chance to win at the end. He came up short, and that sucks, But really, I think he was the true leader of the team, and I'm still proud of the effort that he put forth. And I really, it's one of those things where he had the turnovers. I thought the worst one that he had was the second interception going into the half that ended up giving SC a chance at the giving them a chance to get within 1. But the fumble, I can't really knock him down for that one too bad, because he just got crushed. That was the USC equivalent of the Anthony Barr on the Matt Barkley hit, and the first interception he threw, that's one you're going to get. And then the one at the end of the game, that's one where you kind of got to flip a coin. I think all of us thought that he was going to make the plays to at least tie the game, but when the game is on the line like that, sometimes stuff like that happens. So I'd say a B-. Sorry to get long-winded on you.
No, I think that's a fair assessment. And we got the total DTR experience. And like the highs for me were those 3 straight back-to-back drives when they were matching USC going into the 3rd and 4th. And I thought I was witnessing maybe the greatest offensive game, I've ever seen as a fan of football. It was the greatest offensive performance in the USC and UCLA game in terms of total points scored and total yards. 3 straight drives, 17 plays, 215 yards, and 3 touchdowns. And it was capitalized by that big Kaz Allen touchdown that got him within 3 on that. But, it was just the head-scratching turnovers again for a guy like DTR. And, I can't take this comparison because it was my co-host, Jamal Madney, but I love it so much I'm going to reference it here. He compares him to Russell Westbrook, where the highs are very high, but the lows are, somewhat, bonehead mistakes, things that are easily, can be easily cleaned up. The last interception he was throwing, into double coverage, not a throw that I would have liked to have seen from a guy like DTR. The pick before the half that you mentioned, Jake, very frustrating given the time, the circumstances, the lead at that point, very frustrating. And I would probably lean around a C+, B- as well, because we knew it was at stake. We had a 14-0 lead to lead this game off, and it just felt like we had it that night. And for some reason, we didn't get it done. DTR, a UCLA legend. I want to just tip my cap to him as a great competitor, a great guy that gave his all for UCLA, but unfortunately was not enough. Mike, give me your takes on DTR and his legacy at UCLA.
Really quickly, I mean, you kind of hit on it. It's after the game, I thought this game comprised the best and the worst of DTR as we've seen over the years. Yeah, those turnovers, they just hurt. But then you turn the ball over 4 times and you still put up 45 points. That's pretty ballsy. And that also means that you're playing a defense that's not doing very well. And because, like you say, they were just kind of going back and forth like Rocky and Apollo Creed. And I think he accounted for 6 touchdowns in that game. Like just the mettle this kid has, I've joked that I've nicknamed him Resner because the kid is tough as nails, and he is. It's like he smashes his hand on a helmet and he's still throwing balls out there. Now, that can't be an excuse where your hands hurt, so you threw an interception. But the fact that he didn't make that an excuse, he said that that those were on him. It just shows not only the toughness of this kid, but just kind of what a stand-up leader he has been. And it's unfortunate, an end of an era, a kid who's been there 5 years, has taken his lumps and, goes out successful, but not as successful as they hope. They're out of the Pac-12 contention. They're out of Rose Bowl contention, but they still got 2 more games against Cal. And then however the chips may lie with a whatever bowl they go to. But, Yeah, it was a very special 5 years to have DTR with UCLA, and yeah, he's definitely going to be missed. But yeah, it was just kind of an up and down performance, and yeah, I'm there with Jake. I'm giving him a B minus, and just because I thought what he did good, just kind of surpassed all the mistakes and turnovers.
Yeah, and just a hell of a performance. 81 yards on the ground, 2 touchdowns, 309 yards passing, 4 touchdowns. Unfortunately, the 3 interceptions we referenced earlier in the fumble. That kind of leads me to my next question. And, coming into that Arizona game, we had such high expectations for this team. Just beat Arizona, beat USC. There's a real chance we go to the Pac-12 championship. Who knows what can happen if we beat the likes of Oregon? We can beat SC. I kind of want a grade on the season thus far from you, Mr. Mike Regalado. I'll start with you. A to F, it has just been kind of tough these last few weeks. It's kind of knocked it down to a point where I'm looking at this team and just kind of the defensive woes that have really started since the ASU game 3 weeks ago, and just feeling like it's just kind of imploded a little bit. I'm at, a C plus now, given the schedule that we've had, given the circumstances that we've had. What is it for you, Mike? Because I'm a little disappointed in our UCLA Bruins.
Yeah, I mean, the offense is still top notch, one of the best in the country. So automatically, I give that an A plus. But then you look at the defense, and that drags the grade point average down a bit. I would say the defense, I would give them like a D. They've not just I like to look at the stats, but also just the eyeball test. They were lights out in some games, and some games they just disappeared. The last 2 games, especially that were, very key. The season was on the line, and they, unfortunately couldn't make anything of it. So when you bring those together, and special teams, I think I'm going to go with like a B. Probably a little bit generous, but I just think that they have done really well. All the good, everything good about this season far outweighs everything bad. They're 8-3 right now. 8-3, yeah, 8-3. And it's really bizarre because they're tied for 5th place, and that doesn't say that UCLA is a bad team. I think it actually says how good the Pac-12 has been this year. You can't discount the wins against Washington and Utah, which both are, up there, in all the rankings. But at the same time, you get beat pretty badly at Oregon. You lose by just 3 points against USC, and that Arizona game, that's a head scratcher. So I'm going to go with a B for the season.
B for the season thus far. And I'm going to send it down to our buddy, Jake. Jake, give me your grade for the season, and I want to get your take. Do you think the absence of Bill McGovern being ill, I'm not really sure what's going on with him. I don't think anyone within the UCLA program or, covering the UCLA program is aware of totally what's going on with Bill McGovern. Our thoughts and prayers out to him. What is your grade so far in the season? And do you think the defense's collapse is due in large part to Bill McGovern not being a part of the program these past 4 weeks?
Yeah, I know I have a little bit of a minority opinion on the defense, but number one, as far as my grade for the season for the Bruins this year, I think it's somewhere around a C plus B minus, and that's just because they did have some super high highs. They got into the top 10. They were on the cusp of putting themselves in real contention to go to the playoff, and then just the air was completely let out of the balloon. So I think they went from having just a stellar special singular season to having just another decent season, and unfortunately for the Bruins. The last 20 years, the Bruins in this millennia, they're just not, they haven't had too many of those, right? So I would throw this right in with, maybe just under like the best seasons that Mora turned in, and maybe just a little bit above the 10-2 season where they went and beat Northwestern in the bowl, and that's just because there was some real stakes in the season and they just came up short. Whereas I look at the 2005 season where they went 10-2 and beat Northwestern, they were always never going to go on to big things in that. They were always just kind of skating along by the skin of their teeth, And then in the Mora years, they didn't really have any real true stakes there, even though they got inside the top 10 in a couple of those years as too, but they were always the second or third best team in the Pac-12 behind Oregon or Stanford or whatever combination of those teams there were. This year they had their chance and they came up woefully short, it turns out. And it started with the loss to Arizona. And that is just a damn shame. And it turned, like I said, a chance for a very special season into just a okay season. That's a bummer. So C plus, B minus, I would say, as far as like what the season goes, regardless how it turns out now against Cal and whatever bowl game they end up going to. And then as far as the defense goes, guys, I just don't know. I mean, they played Arizona and then they played SC. Arizona has a pretty good offense. We knew that going in. They gave up a little bit more than Arizona typically scores. I think like 3 or 4 more points than I think Arizona averaged, like, maybe 30, 32, and they give up like 34, 35, right, in that game. I can't remember the exact score. The offense only scored 28 points in that goddamn game. I'm sorry. That is not going to get it done, okay? The offense came up short against Arizona, in my opinion. And that was because they were in that weird, like, is this the conference season or is this the non-conference season? What are we doing here? Are we kind of screwing around? We don't have Kaz Allen. We're going to throw horizontally the whole game, and it is not really getting anything done and only put up 28 points. To me, the Arizona game is solely on the shoulders of the offense because we knew what the defense was. They're mediocre to bad, but they played mediocre to bad and gave up a typical game to Arizona. And I'm sorry, but turning to the SC game, I kind of have the same opinion about it. SC has put up, with the exception of like Oregon State, and I think one other game, maybe Washington State didn't get played, and they're in the 20s against Oregon State, right, or the teens, and they're in the low 30s against Washington State, maybe. Other than that, they're putting up 40 to 50 points on everybody, and they put up 48 on the Bruins. But then again, the Bruins stopped them. The Bruin defense allowed the Bruin offense to get to a 14-0 lead in the first quarter. And then the Bruin defense got the stop at the end of the game and gave the Bruins a chance to win the game. And when the game really got sideways for the Bruins, it was in the middle of the game when the Bruins were committing 3 turnovers, an interception, and a fumble. And the Bruins got outscored, I want to say 24-3 from, about 4 minutes left in the first half till about 6 minutes left in the third quarter. They were outscored like 24-3 or something. It might be 28-3, 24-3, something like that. And so I don't think the defensive performance really changed from earlier in the season. I thought they could be pretty good or they could be pretty bad, not as horrible as they were last year, but not very good. And I thought they've been pretty consistent. And I thought that, in the games when the Bruins really had their letdowns, the last 2 games, it was more on the offense than on the defense. And like I said, I think that's a minority opinion, but I'm sticking to it.
Yeah, and I think it's fair because I think my opinion can change on the overall season. I gave it a C plus, B minus. If you win the next, let's say you beat Cal, you win the bowl game, we're tied for the all-time wins record in a singular season.
Which is crazy.
For the UCLA team. I mean, that's nuts. And I think, there is some credence to the out-of-conference schedule being what it was, but you got to remember Michigan pulled out of the game. And the South Alabama team we win, I don't know if the rest of the country is following them. They're the first team in the Sun Belt. They're 9-2. This is not a bad football team. They still have a game next week against Old Dominion. They could be 10-2 heading into a bowl game. Could be an 11-win team if they claim their bowl game, championship as well. But I think the issue I have, Jake and Mike, is the defense. And Insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. And under the Chip Kelly era, who I'm a defender of, I think the offenses are fantastic.
Us too.
You look at the total defense and just the numbers in his time here, 26-28 record now in year 5. Total defense from 2018 to 22, consecutive numbers. It's 104th, 117th, 73rd, and 74th. And now it's back at 90th. And I'm with you on some of those points. I think the Arizona team, they were a top 10 passing attack when they came in nationally ranked in terms of yards per game. And you took a look at the Jacob Cowings, the T-Max, the Jaden Deloras out there making plays. They're a very solid team. And, UCLA did get, to their credit, they got to stop to give DTR the ball at the end of the game with our guy Liatu Latu. But it's just defense, no matter what has happened, and we're under the crutch of Jerry Azzinaro for years. Now we have Bill McGovern come in, and it just has not changed. And, the defensive woes were on display. I know USC's a great offense, 649 yards of total offense. And that's just an absurd number. Jake, are you under the, kind of canopy that is, I'm with Chip Kelly, I want him to be the coach of the future? Or are you on the camp where it's, hey, if this guy doesn't fix the defense by next year, we're going into the Big Ten. This is going to be way more difficult than what the Pac-12 is on paper. What can we do about that? What is your stance on Chip Kelly?
Well, I'll tell you what, it's a lot softer than it was, 2 games ago. Before I was like, okay, they've done enough to see how Chip can manage the transition into the Big Ten, let alone next year. That's how I was feeling before they played Arizona and SC. Now, I could really be, convinced of anything. I don't think they're going to get rid of Chip Kelly unless they lose the next 2 games, by ugly scores or whatever, and then you're back at an 8-win season and all that. But I feel like Kelly's going to be there next year, and we'll get to see what how he kind of rebuilds this team after this year. We're going to be losing so many guys. But, once again, I'll just state this as far as the defense goes. It is absolutely true that in his first 2 years, that defense was poor, pitiful. It was worse in the conference on pretty much all the metrics. It was, bottom 2, bottom 3 in the conference. And the one I like to look at just right out, just to make it simple, is something like yards per play. 2018, they were 11th in the conference. 2019, they were last in the conference in yards per play, giving up, 6.5, 7 yards per play. But for the last 3 years, the 2020, 21, 22, and I know 2 of those years were with Azanero, and then this last year, half with McGovern and half with Clancy Pendergast. They have been middle of the pack as far as most of the defensive statistics, and they have been, a decent bend but don't break sort of defense. And to me, given the type of offense that Kelly plays and the very productive offense he has out there, but also an offense that doesn't use up a lot of time and leaves the defense out there for a long period of time, I thought that UCLA's defense has done a decent job of not giving up big plays, SC game accepted. Obviously, that was the first game they really let loose this year. And I think that the style of defense they're choosing to play is fine if you can manufacture all that offense. Would it be great if they could go out and get a guy like like if they could play like the SEC, or they could play like some Big Ten defense or whatever, more like the SEC. I'd rather have that defense, but that's probably not something that's going to happen. And guess what? It doesn't really happen across the Pac-12 at all. So I don't know how realistic it is. I think it is realistic for the way that Kelly recruits both, high school and in the transfer portal. If they can cobble together a mid-range Pac-12 defense, that should be good enough to have a pretty good team, considering that his offense has just been pretty darn good every single year. And I think that's a reasonable goal. And then maybe some year they luck themselves into a top 4 defense or so, and then you really are cooking with propane at that point. And as far as the transition to the Big Ten, I don't think the Big Ten's ready for the offense that SC and UCLA are going to bring. And so they can suck on that, and we'll be scoring points while they're sitting there going 3 yards in a cloud of dust.
I like the positivity, but before I go to Mike, I just want to push back a little lightly. The secondary has just been the Achilles heel of this team for so long. They rank 117th now in passing yards per game out of 131. So they are allowing these big passing plays coming. And, you go back to the Oregon game, they were 6 of 9 on third, or 6 of 10 on third downs in that game. And then they were 3 of 3 on fourth down conversions. So they could not get the stops when they needed to. So I just think from my perspective, the front 7 may be as good as it's ever been under the Chip Kelly era. We've talked about Liatu Latu.
I think that's true.
Rushing. He's phenomenal. The Murphy twins, I'm such a big fan of. I think those guys have a future in the NFL. Muwasu, players like this. But, man, that secondary is just so tough. And, for me personally, I just need to see some improvement there. I thought some of the likes of Kirkwood and some of the seniority back there with the Mo Oslings and Blaylocks, we were finally going to get – a decent secondary, a top 60 or 70 secondary. It just hasn't come to fruition. So that's the only area I'd push back on that. Mike, give me your thoughts on the defense for UCLA, because I think this has a chance to really cost Chip his job. And it's crazy we're saying this because he's an offensive genius when it comes down to it. And you've seen the numbers he's been putting up this year.
Yeah, it's year 5. It shouldn't be this way. I mean, I got the first question in the press conference, and I just flat out asked him, how do you account for 600 and, whatever yards in year 5? And, he was like, well, how do I account for losing by 3? It's like, okay, yeah, that's fine. But some of those yards, some of those points, if they weren't there, they would have got the win. The defense, as I said earlier, it's just been up and down, visibly, statistically, good in one game, not so good in the other. It's been better, but under Bill McGovern. But then, The other the defensive coaches have helped out in the last 4 games where McGovern hasn't been able to coach. So I don't think there's that much of a drop off. They know their assignments. They know what to do. But big picture, everything, it's year 5. There's no reason, as you said, the defensive the secondary stats should be 117th in the nation. It should be, if anything, mid-range, in the 50s, 40s, 50s, 60s. I'll even take that. Recruiting has had a little bit to do with it, but I mean, this is Chip Kelly from Oregon, where he had both a stout offense and defense that was complementary of each other. The offense would be on the field, really quickly scoring, and then the defense would have to have a little bit more time. But they, had athletes. They substituted a lot more. It was just a well-oiled machine. Every time Oregon was on the field, offensive or defensively, we just haven't seen that at UCLA, and that has been the downfall of what Chip has been trying to do here. Yes, he lost by 3 points to USC, but how do you account for the loss to Arizona? How do you account for losing an onside kick and losing a possession against Oregon? You can't. Those are, although that's special team, that's a little off. But it's even still, that gives Oregon an extra possession, and that puts UCLA's defense back on their heels again. It's kind of head scratching that it is not at least anywhere near the elite status that the offense is.
Yeah. And I think for me personally, and I want to get your guys' opinions after this, I was about like a 99% sure chance that I wanted Chip to be the guy to lead this team into the future, going into that Arizona game. I still am in favor of keeping him around. I think he is an offensive genius. I don't think there's 4 guys in college football that 4 other guys that I would take over Chip Kelly, like out of all the coaches that can coach offense. His running games, his schemes, the spread offense he's kind of, grouped together, whether he was at Oregon or he's brought down to UCLA. I mean, it is something fantastic and something that you won't be able to teach to another coach. But it's just the defensive side of the football that has kind of knocked me down to about 75 to 70% sure chance that, I want Chip to be the guy moving forward after these last 2 losses. Mike Regalado, Jake Merrifield. I'm going to go back to Mike first. If you're the athletic director, give me a percentage from 0 to 100 on how hot that seat is for Chip Kelly.
I would say, maybe like 30%. He did enough to cool it down from last season. The wins against Washington and Utah, that they helped that. But I mean, if he wants to stay here long term, if he wants to turn this into a championship team, he has to figure out, something anything in regards to fixing the defense. That's the main thing. But I would say about 30%. Jake,
my guy, what are we going with?
I'm it's funny, Will. I was like you. I was very, very, kind of in favor of, seeing where the Chip Kelly era goes a couple games ago. Now I don't think I'm really leaning either way. I'm kind of agnostic about it, right? I could buy into another couple years, or if they want to blow them out, I think I'd be fine with that as well. So I'm just going to lay it right there at a 50-50, coin flip it, because I really do think that there is a toll that's taken on the program when you get the opportunity to have, the big opportunity that they had, and then have them fall flat like they did. Any equity that he already had, I don't want to say, Chip Kelly did himself, but the way the program had performed since he got here had really divided the fan base quite a bit. I know all 3 of us had been like, oh yeah, support Kelly or whatever. And we're kind of behind what they were doing, but there's a lot of the fan base that wants nothing to do with it. And that the truth, that statement is just look at who has been coming out to the Rose Bowl for the last 2 years, right? The first time that place has been moderately filled has been this last SC game. And before that, Chip Kelly era, it's been, nobody in the stands pretty much. And that's something that hasn't happened in UCLA football since since its inception, almost 100 years ago. I mean, that's how bad it was at that low of a point. So, I'll say, 50-50. And as far as what I want to see, I'm kind of on the fence with that. And I still, guys, I will say, the way that they came out this year and the way that they were playing, both offense and defense, I thought it was complimentary. I kind of like the playing the bend but don't break. I'd like them to be a little stiffer in the end zone. But I don't have nearly as pessimistic a take on how the defense has performed this year relative to you guys, and that's okay. I mean, reasonable minds can differ. But with that being said, look, we were on the cusp. They had the best opportunity they've had since 1998, and then the air was let out of the balloon. One big wet fart, and that has to have some consequences to how fans are going to view your program.
That is the truth right there. Mic drop from our guy Jake Merrifield after that one. I want to end, the UCLA USC notes on a positive spin. Michael Ezeike had a hell of a game. And what I've noticed about UCLA USC games is Chip Kelly kind of tabs a guy to break out in these games. If you look at the last 3 years, the coming out party for Greg Dulcich was the 2020 game during the pandemic, 167 yards, 2 touchdowns. Last year was Kaz Allen, the kickoff return, the 3 catches, 118 yards, and 2 touchdowns. And this year's Michael Ezeike, 4 catches, 44 yards, but 3 touchdowns, had that big-time 20-yarder on that beautiful play-action pass from Dorian Thompson Robinson where he looked towards the right sideline. Hit Ezeike, and then he had 2 other ones in the red zone, which was, I think, is just super impressive that he can move like that in such a tight window of space. We also do an NFL draft podcast here. Does this, in your opinion, give Ezeike enough juice to maybe where he can be a day 3 prospect after a 3-touchdown game against his crosstown rival? No bigger stakes. At 6'5", 252, I'm going to start with you, Jake.
I don't think any one particular game is going to move him up the board at all. I think Ezeike is a project. You saw, as great as he played against SC, the game before that, I think it was Arizona, wasn't it? Where he had 2 or 3 drops in the game on some pretty tough plays. So all the film goes up to the next level, right? Not just the good stuff. And it's not like in high school where you can lie about your height and weight and all your stats. And then sometimes they vet it and sometimes they don't. Cause I was 6'6" in high school, I'll tell you, I'm not quite that tall anymore. But it's just one of those things where I think that he's going to be one of those guys that goes in there as a prospect. And one thing the Bruins have done great, in the last 20 years is putting guys in the NFL more than SC, more than most teams in the country. And they have a lot of guys that come out that maybe are kind of underrated. Probably the most notable of that is one of my favorite all-time players, Maurice Jones-Drew, comes out in Reggie Bush's shadow and then is just a 10 times better of pro. And there's been a lot of stories like that for the Bruins over the years. I know one of your favorites is E.K. Eric Kendricks, right, Will? So as far as Ezeike goes, I don't think this is going to make too big of a bump in his prospects. The guy that I'm still laughing at, I think during the Oregon game, somebody rated Charbonnet as a low pick or whatever. Charbonnet to me, he's got the juice. That's the guy I'm picking in my fantasy draft next year for sure. Hopefully with my last pick because nobody else is on him. But Charbs is my guy for the NFL, I think.
Yeah. Did you say we rank Charbonnet as low? Because that was we are all on Charbonnet.
No. During one of the telecasts, they had stupid Kuiper on there or something, and he was like, "Oh yeah, I think he's he's going to be a contributing back or something." No, I think Sharp's got the juice.
Yeah, Todd McShay. I mean, he's buying crack behind the Rose Bowl. It is just, it's absurd because you look at. It's like, are you watching what we're watching? Especially he was at that Stanford game.
Exactly.
Where he probably had his best game of the season. Yeah, for anyone that, follows the Bible and, follows our show, Charbonnet has passed Greg Dulcich is now my all-time favorite Bruin. So that is my guy moving forward. I think he can be, a second-round pick in the NFL draft if he plays his cards right. I mean, Chip Kelly, he doesn't really hand out endorsements to a lot of his players. He's kind of that tough love kind of coach. You hear him talk about Charbonnet, it's like his glowing, son that was just born. I mean, it is a proud father when he's speaking to the likes of Charbonnet. So that's my guy heading to the pros too. Iron Mike, give me your takes on Ezeike because I think he's got the size, he's got the skills. I mean, maybe a 7th round pick if he's lucky. I think there's a chance maybe he can move up some boards, maybe with the likes of adding upon this game to the Cal and maybe a bowl game appearance.
I think that's what he needs because, just similar to Jake, having one game. I mean, he's had some good performances throughout the season, but nothing that stood out like Dulcich or Charbonnet or even Joshua Kelly a few years ago. So I think he really needs to put up some numbers the next 2 games, as well as have, just a hell of a, if he's invited to the combine, or have just, one heck of a senior day, prospect day. I forgot what it's called. but yeah, he needs to find a way to get more attention towards him. But like right now, I think it's DTR and Charbonnet, that are going to be the two highest picked Bruins in this draft. And there are a couple other guys that could sneak in there too. Maybe John Gaines, maybe Raekwon O'Neal. It just depends. It kind of depends on what teams want, what they're looking for, if they fit into their scheme. But as far as Ezeike, I think he has a little bit more work to do. But yeah, I don't think this draft class is going to be bare of Bruins. So
yeah. I got two more questions for you. One is about Cal, and one is just a music-based question. I know we're all music lovers, so I'm going to dive into that. The question about Cal is, how concerned should we be that this is a letdown game? No Pac-12 championship, no chance at making the playoffs anymore. You just lose a heartbreaker to your rival. Are you motivated to get back out on the field and take that 9th win? I know it's Cal. I know they struggle. They're, for as bad as UCLA is in pass defense, Cal's 127th. There's 131 teams in passing yards allowed. That is not good in any slight. Mike, on your scale, how worried should UCLA fans be about going into a Cal game after a massive, massive letdown of the past few weeks?
I don't think they should fear a letdown. I mean, if anything, one thing that has been apparent with Chip Kelly teams is that they fight to the end. They might be down 20 points, but they're going to finish. And I think they want to finish off the season, especially after 2 losses. I think they'll be okay with at Cal.
Love to hear it. Jake, need your thoughts, brother. Where are we going?
Well, number one, I don't know if any Bruin fans are going to be worried or not worried, because I think the apathy set in, and I think there's, it's a good thing it's on a Friday when everybody's got the day off. Otherwise, I don't know if anybody will be watching the game. Actually, I know we all will, because we're sycophants. We're in it no matter what. But as someone who's paying tuition to Cal, my daughter's up there now. I'm optimistic about I think I view the Bears a little more optimistic light. I think that if the Bruins go up there and do have a letdown, Cal absolutely can beat them and will beat them. Just because they can get it going on occasion. They got it going against Stanford at the end of the game, and they're coming in off a high, whereas the Bruins are absolutely completely deflated after that game, I think. And honestly, I don't know who's going to play in that game. I mean, I don't know if I were DTR, if I were Charbonnet, I don't even know why I would play in that game. Honestly, as great as their Bruin careers have been, although I'd love to see them play again. With that being said, I don't know what to expect from the Bruin team in the next game. They've had 2 of the most deflating losses, certainly of the, any player on the team that's on there right now hasn't had a more deflating loss than the last 2 they've had against Arizona and OSC. So who knows how they're going to respond. They responded terrifically in the SC game. They played an amazing game, a fantastic game. But is it all gone now? I don't know. Because now what you got to look forward to is a trip after the day after Thanksgiving up to Berkeley. It's going to be cold and and nasty, probably, coldish, as much as the Bay Area can be. And then you're looking at whatever kind of dumb bowl game you're going to get into. So I don't know how hyped any of these guys are for this game. So I could see them coming in and just saying, geez, we aren't going to lose another game, and if both teams play at their peak potential, UCLA will win hands down. But who knows if we're going to see that Bruin team.
Who knows? And the last question I got for you guys, man. Normally I ask, the guests that come on, what have they been binge watching? Are they watching on Netflix, Apple TV, things of that nature? I know you guys are music guys, man. That was a big conversation point we had at the Pac-12 media. I was lucky enough to go on Iron Mike's radio show talking about music and stuff that inspired me. And I've got a very tough question for you guys, but there's no outs. You got to answer. You got to go with your gut feelings. I'm going to start with you, Jake. You are on a deserted island. You have, shipwrecked, and you have found a record player where you can hypothetically play 3 records, and you get to choose whichever ones those are. I think I know one of them because I know you're a Strokes fan, but I know you got a couple more to go on that, Jake. Jake, you got 3 records on a deserted island that you need to play. Where are you going and why?
So I'd probably I'm bad with album names. Unfortunately, I've when I was a kid and I had cassette tapes and CDs, I knew all the album names. But now I've been on iTunes for the last 15 years, so it all kind of blends together. But I think help me out. Strokes' first album is this it, or this is it, right?
This is it. Classic album. Yeah,
I'm going with that one, although I love their fourth album, the one with Juicebox on it, probably almost as much. But I'll go with the first album. It's amazing. And then my second album, probably, I mean, it's very, very hard, but for brevity's sake, I'll just go Led Zeppelin 1. That's one of the albums I grew up with. And it's got some of my favorite songs on there, although, really pretty much any Led Zeppelin album, I grew up a big fan of theirs. Got to see Jimmy Plant, Robert Page do their last concert at the Forum. It was awesome. I didn't get to see Led Zeppelin. I got to see Plant and Page, which is very cool, and they played all the hits.
Those are 2 guns, man. That's pretty impressive. So
yeah, no, I appreciate that. And then my last one is probably going to be probably Public Enemy, Fear of a Black Planet. I love I love hip hop as well. Grew up a fan of the New York stuff, and it's hard to go one way or the other as far as hardcore or like the more kind of Tribe Called Quest type stuff, but I'll go that album because I love that album and it's very meaningful to me. I love the PE.
3 home runs from Mr. Jake Merrifield. He's got excellent taste in music. I know Mike Regalado's got great taste in music. I'm excited to see where he goes with this exercise. 3 albums. You can't get out of it, Mike. Gut feeling. What are those 3 albums for you?
Blur, self-titled, the one with just a fantastic album from start to finish. Pulp's Different Class and the Murder City Devils in Name and Blood. Just albums that have just stuck with me. Just bangers from start to finish. You have some albums that are, they have good songs, and then they're like, oh, okay, I'm going to skip over this. No, all 3 of those albums I can listen to straight through.
The Murder City Devils sound very much like their band name.
Damon Albarn is a genius, man. So I totally agree with the Blur. Loved his stuff with the Gorillas moving forward. I actually went to the Elton John concert the other night at Dodger Stadium.
Nice.
That was fantastic, man. That was a bucket list show for me. So I was very excited to see him. I got 3 albums. Big hip hop guy like Jake. I'm going the Black Album by Jay-Z. It's a big one for me. I'm going Voodoo by D'Angelo. I got to have that like soul music to kind of relax me. And I'm going 40 Ounces to Freedom by Sublime.
Sublime.
Great vibes. I'm on a beach somewhere, I'm just missing the Corona at that point.
So the Sublime lead singer, before he passed, may rest in peace, he actually pulled my wife, then my future wife, onto the stage to save her from a pit at Harry C's in Riverside way back in the day. So yeah, I go way back with Sublime as well.
Dude, your wife is the coolest person I know. So that is pretty amazing. Jake, Mike, I can't thank you guys for coming on enough. This was really fun. We got to do this again. The Bruin Bible, What's Bruin podcast crossover. Bruin Bible, we are officially out.